So Star Wars The Last Jedi is finally in cinemas, and it is really rather good. So good that I saw it twice in the space of 12 hours and even looked over at my seat from the previous screening and thought, my god, I was sat there 12 hours ago, I need sleep. And while there is a lot to talk about, my thoughts, much like everyone else's, are pointed towards Episode 9 and in particular how Kylo Ren's story is going to play out. Needless to say, this video is riddled with spoilers for The Last Jedi, so if you haven't seen it yet, stop watching now. You have been warned. If you stick around and hear something you don't want to, well, that's your fault. Right, on we march. So the one death that surprised everyone was that of Supreme Leader Snoke. I told you to leave. If you are still here and you haven't seen the film, like I said, your fault. Anyway, here was a hideous tumour of a man who was being built up as the next Emperor, and we even got shades of Return of the Jedi and the confrontation between Luke, Palpatine and Vader. Many people have complained that there wasn't enough backstory to Snoke and that he was a wasted opportunity. But was he really? Or was he just a big red herring, a character created with the sole purpose of making the audience believe that he was the real threat and not Ren? He was a curveball, nothing more, nothing less. The real story here is that of Kylo Ren and the consequences of his actions. At first, it seemed as though murdering Snoke was a noble act to save Rey, and my vocal cords nearly did an orgasm when the two teamed up, and it seemed as though his turn from the dark side was complete. But because life is cruel and we can never have good things, it became apparent very quickly that his choice to save Rey was for selfish reasons. While I believe that he genuinely wants an allegiance with Rey, Snoke's death served primarily to elevate Ren to a huge position of power. A position of power that is even higher than what Vader had. Is this still the endgame for Kylo Ren? To live up to and exceed the idea of what he believed Darth Vader to be? For all his talk of letting go, he was still very much caught up in his beef with Luke, so it wouldn't come as much of a surprise if he was still obsessing over Granddaddy Vader. At this point, he has assumed control of the First Order in a moment where Shizzle got full-on Shakespearean, with Hux gasping the words "Long live the Supreme Leader" in response to Ren's self-promotion. To be fair, you'd say just about anything if your windpipe was being crushed. This sets up a really interesting dynamic for Episode 9 because, as it was revealed from the get-go, the two do not like each other. They never have. You have to believe that Hux will take Ren out the first chance he gets, considering he was close to executing Ren after his fight with Rey, which in itself would have been an ultimate dick move. Could we even see the power struggle go so far where Hux abandons the First Order and turns to the Resistance? I, for one, would love to see him eating some humble pie and go from General Hux to Major Brown-Noser as he tries to make good with the likes of Poe and Finn. It's not even that much of a stretch considering how he doesn't approve of Ren's methods. He seemed genuinely disturbed with how much Ren wanted to obliterate Luke at the climax of The Last Jedi, so I can imagine him not falling in line with Kylo Ren's vision of the First Order. And about that. The First Order is about to take a much darker turn. Now that he's running the show, Kylo Ren will be hell-bent on spreading his power across the whole galaxy. I believe we'll see a much more violent and destructive First Order, with full-scale invasions and occupations whilst making haunting examples of anyone who dares to oppose. You won't even want to return a library book late under this regime. But then again, who actually goes to a library anymore? Anyway, let's move on. But what will this power do to Kylo Ren himself? Considering his turn for the worse in the final act of The Last Jedi, you have to believe that his reign as Supreme Leader will lead him down a violent and potentially self-destructive path, perhaps one that is far too much for the First Order to contain. An interesting twist in the tale could be if the First Order buckles under Ren's unmerciful rule and he breaks away, forming a new order with the Knights of Ren, who are yet to make a substantial appearance, and I would very much like to see them, please. Was this what Rey saw in her vision in The Force Awakens? Initially it looked as though that was him murdering the new wave of Jedi for ultimate lols, but perhaps that was a glimpse into the future as his new order lays waste to the galaxy. If this does come to pass, Kylo Ren could potentially become the most feared man in the galaxy, much like his grandfather was, but arguably more powerful. Vader was always a puppet, and the Emperor had him in check at every turn until the very end. Kylo Ren, however, has no restraints. He is very much the captain now and will do as he pleases. An incredibly dangerous and volatile person who is calling all the shots and is backed up by his band of merry murderous Force users. My god, this is all exciting. Of course, at this point, he would very much be an enemy to the First Order as well as the Resistance. Could we see the story well and truly turned on its head and have an uneasy alliance between the warring factions? After all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Nailed that saying. What a sight that would be. Stormtroopers and resistance fighters banding together to survive against Kylo Ren, his knights and the army they put together. And it is entirely plausible considering the First Order were under the leadership of Snoke and then Ren. Without either, they would be looking to restore order, and ridding the galaxy of the heir to Darth Vader would be high on the list of things to do. No matter what happens though, the trilogy will more than likely culminate in one final showdown between Kylo Ren and Rey, and boy what a tangle that is going to be. Every meeting between them has had a significant emotional impact, which only keeps getting more intense. At this point, they've only met in person a couple of times, but it feels like they've shared a lifetime of experiences. They share a symbiotic relationship. They are both experiencing the same journey but from different sides of the coin, and where Rey needs Ren because of this shared journey, she is far more balanced. He needs her more than she needs him. Ever since he first removed his helmet in The Force Awakens, we saw a vulnerable boy who didn't fully comprehend his place in the world. He is incredibly isolated and torn because of his conflicting emotions and sees Rey as his anchor, someone that can help him take control of himself because she understands better than anyone what he's going through. The crux here is the differing ideologies and their firm belief in them. This has already torn them apart, and everything they've shared will make this potentially the most explosive and emotionally charged lightsaber fight in the whole saga. Ultimately, this is Star Wars, so we can safely assume that Rey will come out on top. But at what cost? I believe that Kylo Ren will be overthrown and totally broken both physically and emotionally, but not necessarily killed. I don't think Rey will be able to bring herself to do that. However, what could be a really interesting final battle is if they are both on a desolate planet, there is one ship, one way off planet, and only one can leave. They have one hell of a fight, with Ren being overpowered at the climax. Maybe throw in a hand dismemberment for good measure. In one final exchange between the two, everything that he has been feeling and that's been bottled inside comes flooding out. His turn, slaughtering the new Jedi Order, murdering Han Solo, etc, etc. He finally purges it all, and with what little he has left, he begs for death. Rey refuses, and while she feels for him, she cannot forgive everything that he has done, and leaves him behind so that he can fully understand and come to terms with himself. With that, his arc would be complete. He comes full circle and understands the severity of his actions, but must atone by living out the rest of his life in solitude, and in one final moment of optimism, the Blue Force ghost of Luke joins him, and the two reconcile after yet another family squabble in the Skywalker household. Somebody get these guys into therapy. This is beyond ridiculous now. How many generations? And those are just some of my thoughts on the potential path of Kylo Ren in episode 9. Let me know what you think will happen in the comments down below, and we can have a little chat about it, and it will be just dandy. Anyway, that would about do it for today's video, so thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more, hit subscribe. That would be lovely. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.